Okay, so everybody, welcome to Somers Library seminar on visiting colleges. And I'm going to hand everybody over to Dr. Deborah Hardy.
So I was going to say good morning, but good evening, everybody. Glad you could join tonight. This is a fun presentation, one that I love to do, not only because of my background in admissions, but also because I too go on college visits, even as a counselor. It's part of what I do to bring back information to students and families based on the culture and things that I'm going to present tonight of a college. Visiting a college shows interest. Visiting a college gives you an open door to engagement with the university. Hold on for a second. We have a chat. Yes, we are recording this. So visiting a college really helps you plan out the answer to why am I applying to this school? So tonight you are going to get some tips that I'm going to give as a former admissions, but also now as the founder, coordinator, owner, counselor of Guided Consulting LLC right here in Mayapack. So let's get started. So what has changed? Bear with me, technology. There we go. So what has changed in the college process? There are two areas that we want to look at. Why are you going to college and why that specific college? Those are key questions that are changing right now in the admissions process. So when you're visiting a school, you want to look at the on-campus characteristics, which I define as emotional because meeting people, joining clubs, things of sorts, is emotional for students as they transition. You want to look at the facilities and the validity of the school in itself and supporting its students. That to me builds that sense of community. And then you want to look at off campus, being objective in sense of this school really has an outside engagement with the community, as it says. Looking at the learning process, am I going to learn in the classroom as well as outside the classroom, and how, with internships, cooperative opportunities, or just volunteering? And is it personalized where I'm just not a number? I'm part of this great community. So these two questions of why are you going to college and why that specific college have become extremely important during the process of visiting. So let's organize the pieces of this visitation process. The first one is getting organized. Where am I going to go, right? And I'm going to certainly talk a little bit about that. The second is the information session on campus, because often you do tours but you do an information session. And then you have the campus life and possibly interviews that can happen when you're there. Someone in admissions might go, oh, do you have any questions? And then thereafter you might get invited for an interview, although I'm not really going to get into the details of that. But I do have students that say to me, should I interview when I go to tour a campus? And I'll explain a little bit about that. And then getting ahead. Once I do the tour, now what? So let me start with the getting organized. I'm hoping that by now students and parents that are on have already started to look at where am I going, when am I going, and have I already registered for the college tours that I plan on visiting. I'm noticing that specifically February break, many universities and colleges are already packed. So there is a waiting list, but others are not. So jump ahead now to March or April break and start setting those up. And as you heard us talking before, maybe start with local schools and then broaden out through the break, right? Because local schools that you're interested in, if they're an hour and a half away, 2 hours, you can do it in a day. Start with those if you are not going to go away, and then move on. So, when you're getting organized for the tour, the first thing we highly recommend is know yourself. Most students will say to me, there goes Dr. Hardy with the brand name thing. And it's not that I don't like Ivy League schools or brand name schools or typical schools. It's that I want students and parents to be open-minded about knowing the student first, and then how does that university fit certain characteristics and traits that the student has. And if it happens to be the high level school, great, absolutely. But it's not about the marketing piece that comes in with universities. It's about the student. So that's why I say know yourself. So ask yourself as a student, how do I learn best? Do I do it project based? Do I like lecture? Am I going to be comfortable in a lecture of 300 students without the professor teaching, but a teaching assistant or preceptors now? I mean, what if I have a question? Will I raise my hand? Will I not? These are great things you have to know about yourself. If I'm doing project based, do I collaborate with others, or am I doing it individually? And do I get help from a professor if I have a question, etc.? What am I involved in that I enjoy? Think about your activities: athletics, community service, clubs, volunteer work outside your community or bigger than your community, whatever you do, jobs, etc. And look at the campus in terms of what organizations do they have. And by the way, you can easily do that ahead of time by going on YouTube, looking up the school you're going to visit, and they have videos on student life and clubs. You can also go on the school's website under student life and organizations and just search out the different clubs and organizations and athletic experience, volunteer work that they offer. And the reason I highly recommend this is because on the Common Application or the college's application, one of the questions that pops up often is, what activity would you be involved in on my campus? Colleges don't want students to be in their dorms all the time, and they want them to be active members of their community. So know yourself in that area. What would make it comfortable for you? And then the size of the class. Remember, I talked about the lecture hall, 300 students. Are you more comfortable in a class size of 25? Are you going to be okay in 300, 100, about 100 students? But then as you get into your major, it gets smaller. Think about your comfort zone so that you have an authentic self-discovery process. Which brings me now to losing my, there we go, sorry about that, to creating that college knowledge, right, of your list. How far from home am I going to be? I've had students who who will say to me, oh, I want to go, let me just say Florida, because it's warm down there now. I want to go to Florida. Okay, you've got to be on an airplane for X amount of hours, and you limit yourself on coming home. Would you be okay if you get homesick or something happens, maybe you won't have someone next to you right away, right? A parent has to fly down. And often they'll get on the airplane and go, oh boy, I never thought about it this way. Okay, so think of the size of campus. Are you going to be okay taking a shuttle bus from one end of the campus to the other, and you have to get up an hour earlier before class to get ready to take the shuttle bus, and then you have 2 hours between classes. You're going to have to stay stuck wherever you are in that building, because getting the shuttle bus back and forth is going to end up taking an hour, and you won't have downtime. Are you more comfortable in a medium environment where the campus layout is concise, easy to get to, and you still feel that you have a lot of greenery around you. It doesn't feel tight. Do you want to be in an urban, in a city? So most students will say to me, I love city environment, and then they hit a city and they go, wait a minute, there's no campus here. It's only a bunch of buildings, concrete buildings here, and no green around me, and the noise of cars and fire department, et cetera, et cetera. Or do you want suburban where you have the nice campus? Rural is going to be more farmland. There are smaller towns, but cities may not be that close. I mentioned a little bit about activities in sports. What are club sports? What are some other activities that are unique for that campus, for that college? And by the way, with activities, I also tend to say, ask about unique traditions. Because every university, when you go to visit, they're going to tell you, oh, yes, we have a tradition of doing this at the beginning of the school year, or we have a tradition at our graduation. I was visiting a school and talking to someone, a student out of school, and they said, yes, when you start as a freshman, you get this item that is part of who we are as a college, right? It's a gift from the college, and then you throw it in a fountain at the college, and then when you graduate, you get a bigger version of this item, right? So one's a baby size, and when you graduate, the next one's a bigger, meaning your growth, which I thought was quite interesting. Talk about majors. Don't be embarrassed to ask about majors when you're visiting a campus. Well, what do the tour guides like about their majors? How are the professors? Do you have an advisor who is going to be assigned to you from day one and staying with you for 4 years? I was talking last year with someone who changed advisors 3 times because of the change of staffing at the university, right? So it's very important. Exploratory programs are for undecided students and very popular right now and does not hinder admissions. And so asking about exploratory programs, are you going to seminars? Are you taking different interest inventories or career inventories to match your interests with majors they offer? Are there any majors that are limited where you can't, if you go into exploratory program, you can't, you have to apply direct to the university's school. For example, some schools for business and nursing and other different majors, engineering, you have to apply direct from day one, which makes it, by the way, more competitive. So just something to keep in mind. Excuse me. Ask about research opportunities and cooperatives. There are universities that offer cooperative education where for junior, senior year, for one semester, you go to work in your area of major, and then the other semester you're taking your classes, where internships you do over the summer. Ask about who helps you set up these opportunities. And these come, hearing from students that are touring you around, or from the information session, presentation, or panel of students that sometimes happen, is key. So once you get to the college, what happens? Often you're going to do an information session live, because we're not in COVID years anymore. So you will have the information session followed by a tour, or a tour and then followed by information session. You often will have that by an admissions counselor, not necessarily your admissions representative. And by the way, every school, high school, is assigned an admissions rep. So while you're touring the school, please make sure you ask who your rep is and get a business card or their contact information. And I'll tell you at the end of this presentation why. You might have an information session with student panel and admissions. I find those more intriguing because you get to hear student experiences. Some schools in addition to an information session, may offer for you to sit in a class. I had a student who did a tour of a school in North Carolina, and she texted me and she goes, Dr. Hardy, should I sit in a class? They're offering me to sit in a biology class. And I said, if you have the time, go for it, right? So if they don't do that on the spot, then ask them, would they have opportunities for students to audit a class? I know some schools now are doing it through Zoom, by the way, which I thought was phenomenal, where you can be at home and you can sign up for one of the classes that are offered. You can't partake in the class, participate, but you can get an observation of how the professor teaches, how the class goes, etc. And I think that's great. Social media channels, very important. Admissions is observing who's following, who's asking questions. So even if you don't follow at the time that you're visiting, I would highly recommend to start following those schools that you really like, because you can post something. I had someone post to a very big 10 school, thank you for the tour and information session I got when I visited, and the admissions counselor that was on social media at the time said, oh, glad you enjoyed it. So it's always good to have this piece in place when you're visiting. After you visit, if you forget about what I saw or what I heard, take advantage of the recorded sessions that they have either on the YouTube channel or on their admissions page. And I'm also starting to see on admissions recorded information about the academic departments. Because remember, I started the presentation by saying, why do you want to go to college and why my school? And the academics is the most important piece for admissions when they're reviewing your application. Yes, student life, organization, sports, etc. Those are great resources you're going to get by attending the university, but you're there as a student first, and then part of the community second, right, with all these benefits. So we want to show interest and insight to the college. Part of organization I forgot to mention, I would highly recommend that, obviously we all have our phones, you set up folders in your phones to save pictures that you take of the university. And I often start off by taking the picture of the name of the school as soon as I arrive on campus, take it, and then put it in the folder, and then start taking the different pictures, because after a while, they're all going to mesh. They all look like brick buildings. They all have maybe palm trees surrounding it, depending on where you go, and they all look nice. So you want to organize folders with pictures. And you also want to look at, as you're touring, you want to look at the bulletin boards around the school. What kind of activities are popping up? What kind of support services do they have? And take pictures of that too, because often the supplemental essays, these are essays that the schools require you to write about them, for their purpose, may ask about what is something that you find meaningful or enjoy. And you might see an activity, pickleball is very popular right now, and maybe they have a pickleball tournament and you're the founder of the pickleball club at your high school. So you can say, yes, I am the founder of pickleball club at my high school, and I saw during the tour that you had this, and that's, I connected very well with that. Everything counts. So when organizing tours, try not to do more than 2 a day. I know that they're taking now up to 2 hours in tours, which I thought was incredible.
Oh, I didn't think she wanted me to drive her.
If we can have folks mute their I'm going to mute this. Sorry. There you go. So try not to do more than two if you can. Sometimes you can do a 10 a.m. and that'll be done by 12. And then depending on where the other college is, if it's close by, you could do a 2 p.m. or a 3 p.m. That's fine. But if not, try to break them up. I often suggest also try to schedule a large school for, one day and a medium school the next to get better perspectives. Or if you want urban and suburban or suburban and rural, um, that'll allow you to see the different sizes, the different layout, etc., that happens with the school you're going to visit. So now we're on tour. So here are some suggestions for you. So again, set up that picture folder, right? Take pictures and organize them in a folder with a college name. Don't forget to put the college name. That's why I take the picture of the college name in case I forget to do it. It's in the folder. So look at the overview of the size of the campus. I remember I landed on one big campus in Florida, and I was walking around and I was like, wow, this is really small, until the tour guide said, no, we have close to 39,000 students here. And I said, well, where's the rest of the campus? And the layout just kept going forever, but it was a beautiful campus, right? And it didn't feel that large because the buildings, the layout of the buildings and the distance between the buildings was very comparable. Look inside dorms. There are schools that are going to take you to view the dorms. And of course, dorms are set up ahead of time. So you have dorms that are their model rooms they're going to show you, and it looks amazing. But when you're visiting, feel free to say, is this a typical freshman dorm? Or is this upperclassmen? I was at one school where the dorms, and they took us into a building, and the entire hall from the entryway all the way up to the dorm hallway was just immaculate, beautiful. You could tell it was brand new. There was a college computer center, and then there was a common room for the students to watch TV or play games or whatnot. And my question was, these are amazing rooms. They're beautiful, they're light, they're airy. Is this a typical freshman room? She said, well, there's two buildings. This is our newest one that we gutted out and put all new things. The other one that's across the way is dated. So just be honest. You will have choice of dorm, but of course everybody on campus is going to want the newest dorm. So I want you to envision, if I get one of the dated ones, is that going to be okay, right? Because where am I going to spend most of my time? Inside the dorm rooms or outside socializing or going to class? And I can handle living in a room that's, the older building on campus. Certainly you have colleges whose dorms look like five-star hotel rooms. No doubt about it. Colleges are investing in their facilities because they know students are living on campus for 4 years, for the most part, not everybody, but they want the typical resources that students need to be up to par. Which brings me to another question during your tour. Do most people live on campus past the first year? And if the answer is half and half or no, then you want to find out where in the community do they reside. There are certain schools where they have townhouses or buildings or homes that have rooms where people move in, or apartments where the students move in. So you want to get a layout also of the outside and what happens when you move out, right? Or you have your own place. You probably should and highly recommend that you try to get into program buildings and see classrooms. I know there's been some limitation depending on the school to take you into, to take tours inside classroom buildings. They still keep it into a basic format of touring. But I would ask, please, can we go into a building? Can we see a classroom? If you are going into a specific program like biology, engineering, medicine of sorts, then you want to see if you can email the admissions or call the admissions office. I would probably call right now and ask if they have tours for specific majors while you're there. And maybe what you do is the general tour, and then you can get if they offer it, you can get the engineering tour where they take you to the buildings of engineering and talk about the programs, etc. Those are really valuable because remember, student first and social life second. Look at the cafeteria and common areas. I remember going to one school on the West Coast and I walked through the cafeteria, and the architecture of one of the cafeterias was just incredible. It looked like a very high-end restaurant. And students were sitting around, because it was a huge university, they were sitting around eating dinner, socializing, and some were actually zooming into their class, which, by the way, is going to happen, as opposed to going into the class itself because it was a large lecture hall, and they felt they learned better sitting in the cafeteria area or the dining hall area with their computer zooming in, as opposed to being in a 300, 400 lecture hall. So you want to look around, look at the styles of food. If anybody has any kind of nutritional issue, you can ask to speak to the dining hall manager or connect with them to ask about if you're vegan, vegetarian, you have Crohn's disease or something of sorts that impacts your nutrition, you can certainly ask to talk to them and ask how they provide the support for students there. Common areas. Common areas are fun because you have them in your dorm buildings, right, where you're meeting with your dorm colleagues. And then you have common areas like a student union or in the library. And some of them are great. I mean, I love going to libraries now in the colleges when I toured them and seeing a Starbucks there. And then there's a little music area with a piano. And I'm sitting here going, boy, library, that should be all quiet. But then that's another piece. Every library on campus has different floors. So the bottom floor is your social floor. And then the fifth floor is your quiet floor. So you want to look at those if you can, if you enjoy going to the library for study. Or do they have study areas? I went to a university where they had these study pods. It was fascinating. And you have to sign up to use it, but it's like a little tent kind of thing where students go in and they're in there. And then I went to another school that had hammocks as their study area. And that was fascinating. It's meshed out with the outdoors, and little kiosks of coffee and snacks surrounding the hammocks. Look at the athletic facilities. If you're going to pursue sports or you like sports, you definitely want to take a look at that. For those of you who have students or students who are going to pursue athletic environment, doing a general tour is just as valuable as touring the athletic facilities with a coach once you get invited to do so, because remember that admissions has the initial and final decision, not necessarily the athletic coach. they can recommend who they want for their teams, but you have to meet the admissions criteria. So doing a tour of athletic facilities to find out if they're up to date for your sport, or you look at the calendar of training that's on the wall. These are great details. And by the way, take pictures, take pictures, take pictures. These are great details that are going to help you understand a little bit more the athletic program there. And then academic support center for me is just huge for students to certainly ask about. You're there to learn, and it's going to be challenging. So you want to know, other than professor availability, what is available for students to get extra help. Some schools have a building in itself that is designated just for academic support. So if you happen to see one of those, you want to go in, see the schedule of academic support for tutoring, etc., right? And then wellness center, often that goes with the athletic facilities, but it is for the general student body. And you want to look at the machines. You know, I have students who come in and go, my goodness, this is much better than the gym I go to here in the area. And it's just incredible to see how modern it is, what classes they hold. Do they have yoga? Do they have Zumba? Whatever. And anything else you might be interested in. And are the machines up to date? So, what do you ask? And this is often, you know, I enjoy going on college tours as if I were one of the students, and I join those groups, and I watch how students often are on their phones during the tour, or looking around and going, oh, I can't wait for this to be done, right? And then I see the parents going, oh, can I ask a question? Can I ask a question? And I love it. I love it because the students should be the ones asking the question. So don't be embarrassed. This is your time. You're going to spend 4 years wherever you go, wherever you decide. So think about it from the perspective of, what do I need to know to make a better decision? So ask, like I've mentioned, availability of professors. Ask about class sizes and format. Start easy. I'm giving you the easy ones. And then don't be shy and ask the tour guide, what's one positive characteristic of the school in their perspective? What do they like? What's one positive characteristic? And on the flip side, what is one thing they would suggest that the college improve on? Okay. Why? Because you're shopping. You're shopping for your education. If it's a state school, ask them, how do out-of-state residents transition to the school? And what I mean by that, I had a few students who went to a large state school and felt that they were sort of, you know, isolated because all the in-staters that went there knew each other in their dorm area, and they felt uncomfortable. So by asking how a school helps out-of-staters transition, become part of the community that they're in, is a big plus. Ask about internship opportunities. Ask about research opportunities. With research, if you're going to engage in that area, I would ask if students can start freshman year, and I would ask, is there a database of research opportunities that are open for students to sign up? Like some schools will have an area on their website where once you're a student there, you can sign up for one of the opportunities and you get interviewed by the professor and you join the team, right? But there are so many more questions that you can ask, and I'm sure you guys are going to come up with different ones. This is really to give you an opportunity to think about more. One of the questions that's coming up right now is how many students stay on campus over the weekend, especially if they're state residents. They might go home for the weekend. and what activities occur on the weekend to engage students. That to me is important. Some students have wanted to ask about Greek life. There seems to be a movement right now. I was in Greek life, so I can say movement of students wanting to be in Greek life. I would ask the pros and cons of Greek life on the campus. I think that's very important. And then secondly, as you're touring, where are the houses, right? Where do students who join fraternities and sororities, do they have houses? How are students selected to reside in the house because there's only limited rooms? I went to one school where the Greek life was all in one dorm building, but by hallways, because the town did not allow the university to purchase homes in town for Greek life. So there are some constraints locally through the town. So as you're touring, you want to, first and foremost, if you can, look through either Google Earth, Google Satellite, or whatever map you use, system you use, and look at the campus from a broader perspective. In other words, you're going to be on this area of the campus, but maybe the campus is bigger, and you want to see it from an aerial view. And on YouTube, you can type in aerial tour of the name of the college, and you'll often see these drone tours that are taking you around aerial to see the layout of the school and its surroundings. I would urge you to do that before you go on a tour, because it'll give you more insight to how the layout of the school is, and if there are main streets cutting through, etc. Why? Because can I walk from campus, from building to building? Can I bike? Or do I need to take a shuttle bus from one end to the other? Walk to town, whatever the town is close by or right in the outskirts of campus, and you want to walk around, get the vibe of the community, sit down either in the cafeteria on campus and then go eat in a restaurant off campus, and feel, listen to, observe what's going on. I had one student years ago who went to a college tour up north, in one of the states up north, and the family was sitting at the cafe before they started driving back, and they were able to, the young lady was able to notice how students were engaged in conversations. There were a couple of students sitting on the quad area and the grass area helping each other out. So it really gives you a good perspective of the community. I had one student who did a test during tours, and it was the smile test. So every time he smiled at a current student, if the current student didn't smile back, he got a different vibe of the friendliness of the campus, as opposed to someone who says, he gives them the smile and says, well, hi, how are you, or welcome. So, everybody has their quirkiness to find out a little bit more about the town and the campus culture. And finally, campus life. I think I've already touched a lot, but ask your tour guide, what is it like to live on a campus? Is it quiet in the dorms? Is it active? Can I go to the library until 1 a.m. to study? And is there campus safety and security? What are some of the good, the bad experiences you've had? And yes, we want the good, but we also want to be aware of where the college could improve, so you're not surprised by anything. Um, what are some of the traditions, obviously, school spirit, and how does it feel to be home away from home? Is it a supportive environment? I also would ask about counseling resources and mental health resources, as well as medical resources on campus, because I think that's very important as our students move from being at home to being independent. You want to notice under activities and clubs if they're major specific versus interest specific. And the reason I put this back on here as part of campus life was because I was doing a college chat, and that's something we've started to do. We're bringing back alum to talk about their experience in college, and the alum mentioned that he was going to try to join a club in business because he wants to certainly learn more about business, but then he found out that it's only for students who are in the major, because in that club they connect students to internships, alumni, and mentor who become mentors. So you want to find out if clubs and activities are open in general, or are there some that are specific? And then what if I want to create my own activity? I would find out how easy it is to create your own club or activity. And the same with sports. I believe I already mentioned that piece there. And then the community, studying abroad, I'm going to bring up the global service here. There are schools that will allow you to do community service abroad or study abroad for a semester. So you want to get a feel for how does that impact your major. I had one student who wanted to study abroad but was studying nursing, and the school said if you're a nurse major you cannot go abroad because you'll be short in credits. So those are things you want to ask. And then you'll hear about honors program, and you'll hear about learning communities. So learning communities is residing in a dorm where students who have the similar interests, be it major or be it a thematic interest, will reside with you. And there's a lot of workshops being held in the dorm for that learning community with professors. Socials are great way of meeting people. I know when I went to college, socials were happening, maybe once a semester, and you got invited by a friend and you went to it and you met new people, and seeing if they have winter socials or winter dance, concerts. I know some universities do a lot of social activity for fundraising for local community charities. So those are great things to be involved with, sorry. And then exploring, in addition to everything I mentioned, but leadership. If you're like the student government, you're involved in student government in high school right now, or class board, and you enjoy that and you want to continue that, ask the tour guide, how easy is it to be a part of leadership experiences? And then with the interviews, again, those may happen after you apply. Many schools do offer formal interviews with alumni, but now you can do what's called a Q&A with your counselor, with your admissions counselor, which is really just doing a Zoom and connecting with your admissions counselor or an admissions counselor if yours specifically is not available, and you ask questions. So at the end of the tour and information session, I'm hoping that you will take time to send a thank you to the email. Remember that business card or contact info I mentioned? You want to send a thank you to the admissions rep, just saying, I really was impressed, or I enjoyed the tour. I thank you very much for all the information, and blast it out, because engagement and interest still plays a major role. And as you drive home or fly home, or even that night in the hotel room or wherever you're staying, I want you to start writing down what is unique about the college that makes you want to apply. How will the resources offered by the college help you get ahead in your career? How will the college help you explore your skills to find your pathway? Did you feel that the facilities were modern and up to date? And most importantly, did you feel and did you see that the school invest in its students? So with that, I am going to open up, Tara, if we're okay for the last 10 minutes to have some questions. And here is my contact information if you have additional questions. So if anybody has questions, I'm going to stop sharing here. There's always a first one.
Well, if anyone's shy, they can always put it in the chat.
That's a good piece too. I forget about the chat. So while people are thinking, one more thing that I would recommend, and I didn't put it on the PowerPoint, if you're there and you know that you want to major in a specific major, right? So let me use business. I would ask the tour guide or the admissions office about to get the information of the dean of business and their contact, because you could always email them a question or learn a little bit more about their program. I know I had a student that visited a school in Florida, and while touring the building of the program, the theatric arts program that she was interested, she happened to bump into the dean of the major of the program, who immediately invited her to pop into a class. Remember, I mentioned sometimes you get invited, and she did. And then he had an interview with her right then and there. She got into the college and she got into the program, which was fascinating. But she was able to see how the students learn performing arts, theater, improv, etc., by just being in that class for that time. So, get the information of the deans and professors that you might be able to talk to, or whoever's the coordinator of the department. That always helps. All right. What is a good time, grade 9th, 10th, to get started with visiting colleges? Oh, that's a great question. Thank you. So I will urge sophomores to begin their college visits. I think freshmen probably too soon. And the reason is because they're transitioning into high school, they're getting to know themselves, they're getting to know what they like, don't like. So to now throw a college in front of them is like getting a deer in headlight look. And often that just creates a little bit more chaos and trauma with them. Sophomores, in the fall, I start working with sophomores regarding their interests, their abilities, because now they've been involved in high school. And from there, I tend to give a list, a very small list, about 3 to 5 schools for them to research and go on the website, go see the videos, sign up for a virtual tour. And that, by the way, is also very good. The virtual tours, in some schools, you get a student walking you around campus with a camera. In others, it's a little different. But I suggest that they sign up for a virtual tour and information session. And then in the spring of their sophomore year, they head to a campus. And again, I start close. I'll give you close schools, and then I broaden it out, right, as a sophomore. And then by junior year, they've already started to broaden their schools. But I think sophomore year, having that discussion in the spring of sophomore year is so key, because often when I was in the school system or even in admissions, we saw everybody sort of clustering tours in their junior year. Spread it out. I hope that answered it okay. So this has been very helpful, lots to consider and digest. Looking forward to attending future programs. I appreciate it. Oh, thank you very much, Dr. Hardy. Very informative. Oh, my pleasure. And there's so much. I condensed it today, but there's usually so much to this process. Um, yes, and don't forget the schools love the swag because that's how they get their names out there. And students often go in and buy all the swag that's there, which I love. I do too. As you can see behind me, you'll see all the banners hanging up. So, any other questions? I did forget to mention, um, while there on a tour, please feel free to ask about financial aid and merit scholarship. I know I forgot one thing and I apologize. You want to ask those questions while you're there from admissions. Okay, how does one book these tours? Thanks again for answering all the questions. You can go on the admissions website of the schools, and now there's a little tag that says visit. You want to click on that, and it's going to give you all the options between virtual, in person, and you just go on the calendar that pops up, select your date, and then you'll see the different options of times, and then click on one. Select what works for you. And then it'll open up a lot of fields to enter: name, address, phone number, year of graduation, things of sorts. And that's how the schools know that you're engaging with them. Great question. Keep them coming. Just one more question that came up this year with the seniors was retention rate. And I always forget that because it's such data driven. But retention rate, asking, what's the retention rate of the university, to me is very important as a former admissions counselor, because you want to know that the school is continuously helping students, right, to graduate, and kids want to keep coming back to the school. So that means that there's something right going on there. If the retention rate is low, don't get too judgmental about it, because there are other factors that could be impacting why students aren't coming back to school, like money, health, and whatnot. So here's a great question. Do most schools require interviews or Zoom meeting before acceptances? No. Some of the Ivies will require it, will recommend it. So you can sign up for them or inquire about them after you apply. Some will say, we'll invite you to an interview if we feel it's necessary. And that's what's been happening the most lately. And other schools will give you the option to sign up. There's one school that says, okay, once you apply, you have a short window to sign up for interviews. So everybody's different. Good question to ask. All right, how should the potential student dress during their tour? Please, no suits. That's going to be overkill. What I would suggest is go casual if they're in jeans, nice jeans. If you happen to be in Florida and it's hot, of course, shorts are fine, but you always want to dress nicely. First impressions are important, right? Admissions counselors are human beings. They know that you're there talking about visiting, and it's very informal, but dress nicely. Is the info on retention rate available on the college website? It should be. If not, you can, depending on what your high school uses in terms of the college tools like Naviance Score or whatever they use, it should be on there too. Great questions. Got a couple minutes left if something else comes up.
Okay, well, I wanted to just quickly mention to everybody that we did record this program so that if anyone wants, wants to recommend it to somebody else, it will be on the Somers Library YouTube. And Dr. Hardy will have a second program on Tuesday, February 27th from 6 to 7 p.m. about writing college essays.
Awesome. Oh, one more question came up. How many schools does a student usually apply to? That's a great question. On average, I've had anything between 5 to 8 or 8 to 12, depending on the student, right? So those are on average. The common application, which is the one application that most schools accept and utilize, has 20 slots for schools. For some reason, many students in the past few years feel that they have to fill up the 20 slots, and the answer is no, you don't. If you do the visits correctly, you identify the points on the PowerPoint that I gave, and you have good discussions about why do I want to apply here, then on average, you're going to be, I would say, anywhere between 8 to 12, give or take. How do kids choose interviews, or are they recommended? So the schools would, if they require interview, you'll see it on their website, or the kids will get emails. And that's the other thing, by the way, make sure your students know that colleges still communicate mostly through emails. So they have to check emails. I highly recommend to create an email that's designated for the college process only. So if a school requires an interview, they will reach out. If they feel they want to interview a student, they will send an email inviting the student. Otherwise, that could be a question the student emails the admissions rep for their area to find out. So I hope I was able to provide enough information on the tour. The one thing I will end with is remember that this is your child's process, right? We all want the best for our student, our child, but remember this is their process. And also remember that they are trying to please you as a parent because you've gone to college or you want the best for them. So always reiterate that it is their voice that's important. And that whatever they like or don't like is just as important. Let them feel comfortable when they go on these visits and tours to be able then to have a good conversation and use the questions I provided, the prompts I provided on the PowerPoint to ask them, so why do you think you would want to apply here? What did you like the most? What did you hear that was unique? And that way you can have a very comfortable conversation. So with that, Tara, I thank you for having me. I know I'll be back soon.
Oh, it's always a pleasure. And as I said, if anyone wants to watch the video, we will have it up in the next couple of days, and we will keep it up for 1 week only.
Wonderful. Thank you, everybody. Have fun on your tours.
Have a good night, everybody.